All right, so to break it all down now, and what comes next for Harvey Weinstein, we have our legal analyst, Rikki Klieman, joining us. Thanks a lot for joining us, Rikki. So the video that we did not get a chance to show was Harvey Weinstein walking out in handcuffs. There are sure to be at least 80 women, perhaps more. There he is, that never thought this day would come. You've been following this case all along. You know the accusations, but you also know the kind of level of proof that's needed before charges can be filed. Did you think this day would come?
I wasn't sure, to tell you the truth. You and I spoke on air as early as yesterday. And one of the things that we talked about, which I think is worth repeating, is that District Attorney Cy Vance, who is the District Attorney for the County of New York, which is Manhattan, is someone who is very, very deliberate. And he believes, as many DAs do, but not all, that you should not go forward with a case to the level of prosecution unless he believes that he can prove the elements of the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But there are others who differ.
You know, this is one of those cases that, you know, the public has been crying out for something to be done for a long time. Could he be under some intense political pressure to charge Harvey Weinstein with something, anything, particularly after Bill Cosby?
Well, I think that DAs are always under intense political pressure when it comes to celebrity cases. But Cy has a great deal of integrity, and he would not bow to political pressure. What he had here was something really smart. He decided to impanel an investigatory special grand jury. He had one of his best prosecutors, who is experienced in this arena, call these witnesses. They have interviewed, if not dozens, hundreds of witnesses over the course of these many months. They have subpoenaed documents, and that includes emails, that includes business records. So what you have to remember is when a prosecutor is building a case before a grand jury and ultimately for trial, in order to not have a simple he said, she said, particularly where there are no hospital reports, there is no DNA or other forensic evidence, how can you show that the alleged victim is telling the truth? Well, were there people in the office who facilitated her arrival and her departure from the day that she says that she was sexually assaulted? And I'm talking about if it is the Lucia Evans case, which allegedly happened in the office. If it comes to the alleged rape case, that is the rape in the first degree case, that may be a case that involves an actress that took place in her own apartment. So is there a doorman? Is there a taxi driver, an Uber driver? Is there someone that these women told in a very fresh way as soon as it happened? So they want to build up a story. In addition, what you have with Harvey Weinstein that you don't necessarily have with other defendants, which is all to the prosecutor's benefit in the end, should they have it, is that we know there was an elaborate system of handlers, including in many situations the paying off of women of what we would call hush money in non-disclosure agreements. We don't know that that necessarily happened here, but nevertheless, there are people out there who were enablers of his that could help these cases.
Right. They would know the inside story. Could we see perhaps other accusers? We're showing the many, many women who have come forward. Could we see other accusers part of either one of these cases in the same way we saw it with Bill Cosby, in an attempt to display or show some sort of pattern of behavior?
Yes. Ultimately, that question is up to a trial judge's discretion. As we remember in Bill Cosby's first trial, you had the accuser, Andrea Constant, plus one additional accuser. Hung jury. Bill Cosby's second trial, 5 other accusers. Now, there is always a balancing act under the rules of evidence. Any other accuser, by definition, that evidence is what the lawyers call unduly prejudicial. While saying that, if the evidence shows a common scheme or plan, a pattern, a signature, an MO, if you will, that evidence could be admissible within the judge's discretion. And as we know, the more accusations you have, the better chance for a conviction.
This is the case that started the Me Too movement.
He is the symbol of Me Too.
He certainly is. And as a result, much of how we handle these sort of accusations has changed dramatically. How much will that factor in for him? You know, we had talked before about the Bill Cosby case and how during his first trial, it was prior to Me Too, and during his second trial, it was right in the middle of it, and that may have had an impact. Now, here comes Harvey Weinstein, the case that probably that triggered this whole thing, and he's going to trial smack dab in the middle of it.
Well, don't we think that the most important thing for a criminal defense lawyer in this case is the process of jury selection? If there is a trial, which Harvey Weinstein says that he has never sexually assaulted anyone,
right,
that any sex he had was consensual, that's his defense, that if there is in fact a trial at some point, which I don't expect to happen anytime soon, that jury selection is going to be about people saying, yes, I know about the allegations. Yes, I've heard about the evidence. Yes, I know about Harvey Weinstein. And yes, I know all about Me Too. Nevertheless, I can be a fair and impartial juror. So the process of getting beneath those statements on the part of the lawyers to be able to see, are there jurors here who can actually get beyond what I call the elephant in the room, which is the Me Too movement. Me Too is not evidence, but we can't get rid of it in terms of what we really believe when you go into the jury room. Don't be surprised if there is both a motion at some point for a change of venue, because the publicity has been relentless within New York. Of course, it may be relentless in other places too. But you did have a pretty big public turf war between the NYPD, the police department, who kept saying they had enough evidence,
right,
and the DA, who was not ready to charge. So that has an effect. And then ultimately, I expect that there would be a motion to dismiss for prejudicial pretrial publicity. Doesn't mean either of those will be successful, but they'll be filed.
You know his attorneys.
Yes.
What are they like? How would you characterize them?
Well, I certainly would characterize Ben Brofman as one of the finest criminal defense lawyers in the United States of America, not just in New York. I think that there are many people who would say if I ever got into trouble in New York in a serious case, my first call would be to Ben Brofman. He is as fine a lawyer as there could be, understands the rules of evidence and the rules of procedure, and he is very highly respected by judges and prosecutors and police alike. He's just someone who's ethical. What you have in Ben Brofman, you may recall in the celebrated case many years ago of Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Dominique Strauss-Kahn, who was accused of sexually assaulting a maid in a hotel, that when Ben Brofman represented Mr. Strauss-Kahn, there was no indictment. So one of the issues here would be, of course, if you're someone like Harvey Weinstein, you look at Ben Brofman's track record and you say, well, if Dominique Strauss-Kahn did not get indicted, perhaps I won't either. And the longer time went on, perhaps, I can only say perhaps, that Harvey Weinstein believed that he might not be indicted ultimately. But once that grand jury sat, that's a different kettle of fish.
Right. Can we play some of the video of him walking in? We were watching it this morning. Jerika Duncan, our reporter who is down there, said that he, seemed a little unsteady, and I sort of noticed that he seemed a little unsteady too. He's clean shaven in a way we haven't seen in a lot of the video, and to me, it looks like he lost a little bit of weight. He's holding some books, and from what I understand is at least one of the books is Something Wonderful, Rodgers and Hammerstein's Broadway Revolution. Just getting an email to see what some of the other books might be. Biography of Elia Kazan. Okay, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Some interesting choices of books. But, what was your take when you saw him walk in? What did you think? Because I thought he looked a little unsteady on his feet as well.
I think he looks, this is just obviously a personal opinion, I think he looks shell-shocked.
Yeah.
Harvey Weinstein, we are used to seeing him being bold and blustery and someone who really ruled the roost. Harvey, in a public forum for so many, many years, his extraordinary parties at the Golden Globes, his being the toast of the Oscars. This is someone who really was a powerful person. And frankly, to those people who did not know the so-called well-kept secret in L.A., that well-kept secret in L.A., as it is called, was certainly a complete secret to most people in New York who had seen Harvey over the years in various public or social encounters. And that this is a different Harvey Weinstein, looking sober for sure, and I don't mean that in the sense of drinking, not drinking.
Right.
I just mean looking serious and really looking shell-shocked, definitely walking slowly.
Right.
The choice of books I may or may not be arbitrary, but the reality is this. He may have a very long day today and may want to distract himself by looking at something that has nothing to do with what's happening to him, particularly while he is being processed, while he's waiting in a holding cell to go before the court. It is said that his lawyer has worked out a bail arrangement with the district attorney, which would be the prudent thing to do, that he would post $1 million bail, that perhaps and surely likely he will be wearing an ankle bracelet or something that lets us know where he is at all times. My real question at this hour of the morning, which may or may not be answered for rather soon, is where will Harvey Weinstein reside pending this trial?
Right.
Ordinarily, the jurisdiction that has process over him, which would right now be New York, would want him to stay within the confines of New York in order for him to be monitored through New York authorities. However, it is possible that because Harvey Weinstein has allegedly been in a rehab center out of state for quite some time, it is possible that they've made arrangements to transfer him and have some other jurisdiction look after him. He will have no passport, he will have no means of travel, and he will be very much someone who will be monitored. And if I were his lawyer at this point in time, I would also want him watched very closely. I think that no matter how much you may, in some kernel of your head or heart, think that this day could come about, there's a lot of you, as any human being would have, that would be believing that maybe this day will never come.
Right.
And so the shock of this, he's never been inside a jailhouse cell, that I would really want him monitored 24/7 for a bit of time.
Right. So we have other investigations that are still going on. We learned about a federal investigation. We talked about that with you yesterday. There's an investigation in Los Angeles. There's an investigation in London, England.
Correct.
Could this case have an impact on any of those investigations?
Well, Harvey Weinstein says he is not guilty of any forcible sexual encounter anywhere. So, if I am his lawyer, and Ben Brofman, as I say, is as good as it gets, no matter how much your client says he or she, in this case he, is innocent, you have an obligation at the same time to go forward and see what else is out there. And in the event that times should change and minds should differ, that you should try to work out a composite deal, what we call a package. Is it possible that if there are going to be further indictments, at least within the confines of the U.S., that is in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills and the federal government in New York, and perhaps even other cases within New York County, isn't it your obligation as a lawyer to try to work this out into what I would call a global package or settlement? London may be yet another wrinkle in this. Now, your client may say to you, I don't want you working out anything with anyone. I didn't do this. I'm going to try every case. But you can't just sit there and not show what the alternative is, even if your client rejects it.
Right. Rikki Klieman, always great having you along for these sort of cases. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emery.